Okay, so you want to own an Amazon warehouse. Massive building. Endless conveyor belts. Trucks lined up at the dock, 24 hours a day, moving more inventory than most countries' entire retail sector. It looks like the crown jewel of e-commerce, the physical proof that Amazon actually works. But here's the strange part. In most cases, Amazon doesn't own the building at all. And once you understand why, you'll never look at a fulfillment center the same way again. Because what's really happening inside those walls isn't shipping. It's a financial structure so precise, so quietly engineered, that Amazon has effectively turned every warehouse into a machine for extracting rent, fees, and behavioral data, without ever needing to own a single box you buy. So let's start with the building itself. Because if you assumed Amazon owns its warehouses outright, you're not alone. Most people do. Here's what nobody tells you. Amazon leases the overwhelming majority of its fulfillment network. It doesn't want the building. It wants control of the building without the balance sheet weight of owning it. When Amazon does build from the ground up, the numbers are staggering enough to explain why leasing is usually the smarter play. A robotics fulfillment center in Wilmington, North Carolina broke ground on a 650,000 square foot lot and will stack more than 3 million square feet of floor space across 4.5 floors once construction finishes, on a project that broke ground the previous fall. In North Andover, Massachusetts, Amazon's 5-story, 3.8 million square foot distribution center ended up costing more than $600 million, over 50% above what was originally projected. In upstate New York, a 5-story, 3.1 million square foot robotics center is running an estimated $550 million. Why does that matter to you, the person trying to understand how Amazon actually makes money? Because those numbers aren't rounding errors. They're the reason Amazon structures ownership the way it does. A building that costs $500 million and takes years to construct is a liability the moment demand shifts. Leasing lets Amazon scale a facility up during peak season and quietly let it go if the region underperforms, without ever writing down the value of a building it owns. That's the trapdoor under the floor. The warehouse isn't an asset Amazon is proud to hold. It's a cost center Amazon is constantly trying to make disappear from its own books. Now here's where it gets genuinely interesting. Because the reason Amazon can shrink its exposure to real estate is the same reason it's quietly shrinking its exposure to people. Amazon now runs more than 1 million warehouse robots, closing in on its roughly 1.2 million strong operations workforce. That fleet didn't creep up slowly. It crossed the 1 million mark just over 6 months after sitting at 750,000. And the effect on the humans working alongside them is not subtle. According to reporting based on internal documents, Amazon now averages just 670 workers per fulfillment center, the lowest headcount per facility in 16 years. At the same time, the number of packages handled per worker has surged from about 175 in 2016 to 3,870 in 2025. Let's do the math on what that actually means. One worker in 2016 was worth roughly 175 packages of throughput. That same worker, in the same job title, is now worth over 3,800. That's not a productivity improvement. That's a structural rewrite of what a human being's labor is even for inside that building. At one of Amazon's most automated sites, only about 100 of 2,500 employees are responsible for overseeing the robots, and internally, the company has reportedly avoided using words like automation and AI when describing the shift. Here's the part that breaks people's brains. Amazon isn't selling you speed because it loves you. It's selling you speed because the marginal cost of shipping your package just collapsed, and the warehouse is the machine that made that collapse possible. So, anyway, before we get to who actually pays for all of this, it's worth pausing on one thing most people completely miss about how Amazon prices the space inside these buildings. Because it's not really about shipping at all, it's about rent. And that's exactly what the next section breaks down, the mechanism most sellers on the platform don't understand about their own costs until it's too late. Okay, so here's the part that actually explains where the profit is hiding. Because the warehouse isn't just where Amazon ships your order from. It's where hundreds of thousands of independent sellers pay Amazon to store their inventory, and the fee structure is engineered like a landlord's lease, not a shipping invoice. As of 2026, standard monthly storage fees sit at 78 cents per cubic foot from January through September, then jump to $2.40 per cubic foot for October through December, the exact window when sellers are forced to stock up for the holiday rush. That's not a coincidence. That's the peak season markup, and it triples the off-peak rate for the month sellers can least afford to skip it. Then there's the cliff. Surcharges on aging inventory begin at 181 days, not the 271 or 365 days most sellers assume, starting modestly around 50 cents to $1.50 per cubic foot for the 181 to 270 day window. Miss that window, and at day 271, the rate jumps to $5.45 or more per cubic foot. Run that on a single small item, something around a third of a cubic foot, and you're looking at roughly a quarter a month in the quiet season, ballooning to about 77 cents a month during Q4 on that exact same unit. Why would Amazon build a fee structure this precise? Because the warehouse doesn't need you to sell anything to make money off you. It just needs your box sitting on its shelf. That's the same mechanism as a shopping mall charging an anchor tenant for square footage regardless of foot traffic, except here, the anchor tenant is an entire ecosystem of independent businesses who don't even realize they're paying rent. Which brings us to the final piece, the one that reframes everything you just heard. Because on the surface, this looks like a story about robots replacing people, or about a company squeezing sellers on storage fees. But that's the fantasy version. Here's what's actually happening underneath it. Amazon's logistics division has quietly become something closer to an infrastructure landlord than a retailer. Third-party sellers pay it rent through storage fees. Amazon's own retail arm pays it a lower internal cost per package thanks to automation the sellers helped fund through those same fees. And the human workforce, 1.2 million people strong, is being asked to generate more throughput per person, every single year, inside buildings the company doesn't even want to own outright. The building isn't the business. The building is the excuse for the business. What Amazon actually built isn't a warehouse network, it's a toll road that every seller, every worker, and every customer pays to use, whether they ever notice the toll or not. So that's the real structure underneath every fulfillment center, a business that makes its money whether or not the product inside the box ever actually gets bought. Rent from sellers, cost savings from robots, throughput from workers. The box is just the excuse. But here's what's strange. Amazon isn't the only company where the thing you're buying isn't actually the business. There's another brand almost everyone eats at, almost everyone assumes runs on burgers, and it doesn't. Its real profit engine is something most customers standing in line have never once thought about. Next time, we're breaking down the economics of owning a McDonald's, and why the company that sells you a Big Mac is, underneath it, one of the largest landlords on earth.